see in the building.
Nostalgia.
I come from a drama background, I'm an electric drama background, as a little hope, so I apologise if I'm going over very familiar ground here that you sound experts are all very, very familiar with, but I'm kind of finding my feet with sound still, so I appreciate any insight you can give. Okay, this paper will discuss my use of binaural sound recording and the manner in which a place's mapping of itself interacts with the headspace of a human listener. I was at a conference in Aberystwyth in 2009 where I watched the noted sound recordist Chris Watson make a presentation. In it he explained how once in Kenya he had managed to surreptitiously plant a series of microphones within the ribcage of a zebra that had recently been killed by predators. He then waited for scavengers to arrive, which in this instance was in the form of a wake of vultures. Watson then played us his recording, and suddenly we, the listener, were transported to inside the ribcage of this unfortunate creature, with the vultures towering over us. You can actually get that online. If you type vulture, zebra, Chris Watson into Google, you'll find it on SoundCloud. But in the studio space, it was quite an astonishing feat. There were two aspects of this moment that resonated with me. Firstly, the shift in scale through the use of the surrounding speakers, in which I felt simultaneously shrunk and place itself had grown around me. Secondly, there was no way a listener could have physically inhabited the place and got the same recording. It was the first of these that led me to binaural sound recording. For those who have not come across this technology, although we have heard it mentioned this morning, it consists of two small omnidirectional microphones that are located in each of our ears. These two microphones attempt to capture the inter-aural time differences that occur between our ears that allow us to locate ourselves in a place. A sound heard to my right will hit my right ear a few milliseconds before the left, my brain using this to calculate direction. Because the microphones are omnidirectional and fitted within the ears of the recordist, they are able to utilise what Jose Javier Lopez and Alberto Gonzalez refer to as the acoustic antenna effect of the outer ear to further humanise stereo recording. Because of the similarity between human head sizes and the shape of the inner and outer ear, a recordist's hearing experience can be quite effectively replicated for a listener wearing headphones. This illusion is compounded by the haziness of locating ourselves in a place through sound alone. In the practice of everyday life, Michel de Certeau suggests that where space differs to place is comparable to that of the word when it is spoken. Space for de Certeau is an articulation, a sounding of something that has a form that is not fully realised. As Douglas Kahn observes, the source of the sound is surrounded by its own sound, in which the dimensions of place appear to fluctuate. This is echoed by Salome Vogel, who describes listening as producing place as a transitive location. To listen is to provide a landing point for sound, to place it in relation to us. However, through sound alone, there is always a degree of uncertainty of what and where place is, as many have talked about this morning already. This is a sound map of Jerusalem by a graphic designer called Ronnie Levitt. The larger circles are reference to the call for prayer. You get a real sense here of the different hierarchies of sound that are in that city and how they all intersect with one another. It is this uncertainty that has been explored by a number of artists, including Janet Cardiff and her partner George Burroughs Miller, who we heard about this morning already, Lucy Stevens and Sarah Heitlinger. Both Cardiff and Stevens' binaural sound walks encourage the listener to inhabit the same place as the recordist at a different time, creating a disorientating experience as the present and past vie for attention. Such works of Matthew Barnard create a new reality, use the minimal dissonance created by locating them in the same place recorded. What's most striking about binaural sound recordings is there's this kind of great paradox where these two tiny speakers on our headphones within our ears can create an impression of a place that surrounds us completely. Some academics, such as Barnard, inspired by this, and Tarek and Mann, suggest that such a surrounding soundscape is a positive space that subsequently creates a negative space within the head of the recordist. However, I find a difficulty with such an observation. because it kind of implies that the head itself keeps sounds at bay, that there's a complete cut-off point between the boundary of the head and the outside world. When in fact, as obviously as studies have shown, we hear through our skull as well as just through our ears. Although, as Imam observes, the head acts as a natural block between our left and right ear, it is not a complete one. A binaural recording does not just hold the sounds of a place, but also those that have reverberated through the head of the recordist. This distinct, although subtle, imprint of the recordist's presence within the recording is known commonly as a spectral watermark. I subscribe more to the concept of headspace, a term long in existence, but one more recently discussed by Peter Salvatore Petralia with reference to immersive audio performances. Headspace for Petralia is a feature of performance that feels as if it is occurring inside the listener's head. It recognises how immersive audio can colour our brain's ability to connect external impressions of a place with our imagination. Again, that word. Petralia describes the sensation as being akin to the type of sight you have when your eyes are closed, when the world seems to be inside you and simultaneously present with other outward images. There is no separation between place and listener here. The two are entangled with one another. My listening of a binaural recording is therefore not a simple exchange of me for the recordist. My brain has to quickly adapt and establish connections between the loose strands of sound, acting as a third party between the spectral watermark of the recordist and the place recorded. It's easy to fall for the illusion, though, even when listening to a place far removed from the one you are currently in. Has anyone heard the virtual haircut thing? Has anyone done that? Yeah. You go on YouTube when you later type in virtual haircut, have some headphones, you will feel as if you're having a hair. It's quite bizarre. I mean, I say feel, you will, when they get the razor out, genuinely feel, even though you're just hearing it. And then they put a bag over your head, and it's quite a remarkable experience with your eyes closed. Occasionally, the real world will interrupt, but there is no way to step out of this place heard. It's kind of surrounding. I became interested in testing our ability to suspend our disbelief with regards to binaural recordings of place by making the recordist non-human. Brandon LaBelle asserts that place paradoxically comes to life by being somewhat alien, other and separate, removed and dislocated. By giving a pair of ears to a place, could it in a sense be brought to life? My premise was simple. If you could give a pair of ears to an object or structure, what would it hear? If Wolves Could Hear is an ongoing project which seeks to explore the way we entangle ourselves within the sounds of place and to what extent we can listen to place hearing itself. If we look at the differences between hearing and listening, we can perceive that actually stating that a place can hear is perhaps not as provocative as it may appear. As Hildegard Westerkamp notes, unlike our eyes, we cannot close our ears, as we are always bombarded with different sounds, existing as a series of vibrations that our bodies react to. Hearing is passive, largely, whilst listening requires a conscious decision to tune into particular sounds by creating a hierarchy of those that we feel important. Now, I understand that the idea of place being able to hear is quite a far-fetched or abstract notion, and obviously there are complexities regarding how we hear unconsciously. Nevertheless, at its basis, hearing is a reaction to sonic vibrations, ones which are temporarily stored within a given material. Last year, I don't know if anyone saw this, but researchers at MIT, in collaboration with Microsoft and Adobe, conducted an experiment whereby they were able to extract audio signals from the small vibrations made by a variety of materials, including aluminium foil, the surface of a glass of water, the leaves of a plant, and a crisp packet. So what they do is they've got an object, they can't hear the sounds that are going on around this object, all they have is the visual image of it, or the footage of it. And they record that at a very high frame rate. And based on the vibrations of the object in question in that image, they can extract the sound. So this video will hopefully show.
In the silent high-speed video shown here on the left, we see the leaves of a potted plant shown on the right. The video was recorded while a nearby loudspeaker played the notes to Mary Had a Little Lamb. play the video in slow motion here, the vibrations caused by the music are so subtle that they move the plant's leaves by less than 1/100th of a pixel, making the plant appear still to the naked eye. But by combining and filtering all of the tiny motion happening across the image that you see, we are able to recover this sound.
So just to echo, they don't have any sound at all. They're just looking at the video bits and recording the sound onto there, just based on those vibrations. Okay, so now I'm going to play a number of the sounds recorded from the All's Good Here project and evaluate their effectiveness with regard to its overall aim. It's obviously important to note that these are designed to be heard on headphones, so to replicate the original recording conditions. But it should be quite interesting. That now is my left ear and that's now my right ear, so it's going to be quite an interesting shift in scale. Okay, so as a prototype, it's just a little pilot project. I started with the kettle in my flat. Placing the microphones either side, the subsequent recording relocates the listener to within this household appliance, the water seeming to boil in their head. This is magnified by the hollowness of the kettle's structure, in which there is little or no shadowing of sound between both ears, creating a pronounced spectral watermark. The loudness of the sound makes it difficult to register its place, although one assumes that it's occurring indoors. As you can see from this picture, my recording technique for the whole project has not been very sophisticated. I don't know what, I think the cardamom there is just to keep the wire from coming in contact with the kettle itself. So I've relied heavily on blue tack and sellotape and some cocktail sticks there to attach to a variety of surfaces. Where this was not possible, I fixed the microphones to rudimentary stands propped up next to a specific structure. This was obviously a limitation of the project, which I'll talk about later. The lamppost on the Christmas steps in Bristol is of a binaural recording slightly narrower than the average human head, it's about that big. So here the sounds of a place do not just surround us, they overwhelm us because it's so tight. You get a sense of height here because you can actually hear the footsteps going beneath you, not by the side of you. Internally, however, there is little or no sense of response to the sounds heard. Having explored narrow distances between ears, I next sought a much more expansive field by giving a pair of ears to a whole building. I used two sets of microphones recording simultaneously, putting them together in one stereo file. So a 100-metre building is now shrunk to the width of your head. Due to such a distance, I was expecting there to be quite a degree of discordance between the two recordings. However, this is not notable. What again is difficult to register is a sense of location, as the two ears are so far apart that they are shadowed completely by the building itself. For both this recording and the lamppost in particular, I was really tempted to edit the sound files in post-production, adding an echo effect to heighten the scale of difference between the two microphones. However, I felt that this would overly direct the listener's experience, and and would actually detract from the immersive quality of the recording. Finally, I gave a pair of ears to an inactive wind turbine in Llanthelp in Wales. Walking around, I knocked on the structure, the ears capturing the metallic reverberations as well as the sound of my footsteps walking around. When you're listening to it, I can get a real clear sense of the size of the structure, and I can actually locate where it is I'm hitting what essentially feels like my head at different intervals when I'm walking around. As Brandon Lavelle and others have observed, this location seems to posit the possibility of finding a place to bring the alien back home. If Walls Could Hear presents the listener with a soundscape, although immersive, is one alien from their own listening experience. Listening here is finding a way to merge with a place, although I'm not sure still as to how successful the project has been so far in this regard. What I have learned from the project so far is how naive I was in terms of referring to the two microphones as ears. Although they receive sound, the manner in which they do this is very different to how we as humans hear. For a start, removed from the ears of the recorders as they would usually be, they lack the outer ear that helps amplify the sound, as well as help locate sounds in front or behind us. In addition to this, the microphones are designed to be inserted into the ears, to utilise the intracranial architecture of the skull and the shape of the inner ear. In all my recordings, the microphones stood pronounced from their specific structures, placing more of an emphasis on the externalised soundscape than on the internalised headspace. This was either because there was no place to insert the microphones into, or I did not want to cause damage to the structures recorded. With this in mind, I also did not fully consider the importance of where the ears should be located. Often this was due to simple logistics. I couldn't get to the top of the wind turbine or up the side of the building. But on the whole, I found myself positioning the microphones as if they were ears on a head. Given the nature of the project's aims, it would seem quite natural to anthropomorphise these parts of place for the recording process. However, once listened to with headphones, I would argue that the reverse also occurs, in which we glacialise ourselves to a degree. Because the recorded soundscape that surrounds us is entrenched in place, it becomes quite difficult to objectify it fully. It somewhat results in a disconcerting merging of the listener and an aspect of place, in which the dimensions of our headspace fluctuate more dramatically. In terms of the future of the project, I would like to allow more of this merging of place and listening. This would require modifying the microphones to allow them to be easily applied to different structures and a set of artificial outer ears. This would allow for more of a discernible spectral watermark of the structures in the recording, sculpted by their scale, material, and density. Perhaps hearing is not an accurate term to describe these structures' encounters with their soundscape. The term sounding board might be more applicable, indicative of the structure that aids projection of the speaker in the pulpit, but also in a more colloquial usage of the term, as something that responds to sound and provides a form of feedback. Despite the need for improvements, If Walls Could Hear suggested another approach to creating a phonography of place, in which through some simple technology, we the listener are provided with a new place to listen and a new listening